Hi everyone, my name's Lily and I'm the book reviewer behind Utopia State of Mind, and it is time again to chat about the Librofm sales for the month of September. If you are new here, you will not know that every month I go through the Librofm sales for the YA Club, the Kiss Club, and just general sales or new books that I've seen on sale. And I tell you my recommendations and what I think you should get in the sale. If you don't know what Librofm is an independent audiobook service. Once you buy the audiobooks, they're yours forever. They do not support Amazon. They're for supporting independent bookstores, and you can pick which independent bookstore your subscription supports. You do not need to have an active subscription to take advantage of these sales. You can buy them as is. A subscription is $14.99 a month for 1 credit, although they are rolling out, or they have rolled out, new plans for multiple credits if you listen to a lot of audiobooks. If you do have an active membership, though, you'll get an additional 30% off the sale price of all books you buy on Librofm, but as well on the sale books. So extra great deal. I'm first going to talk about the YA Club, then I'm going to talk about the Romance Club, and then the just general sale books. So basically these YA clubs and romance clubs or kiss clubs, they are curated lists. You just join, you sign up, you get email notified every month about them, but they are curated. So for example, later on you'll see in the sale books, I actually have books that would fall into some of these categories that were not on the list. Just wanted to mention that. For the YA Club this month, there weren't a lot. There were actually only 2 pages of books on this actual list, but there were still 4 that I wanted to chat about. The first is Their Vicious Games, which I read a copy of this book before it came out, and then I also went to the launch event for Their Vicious Games. And this one is such a fantastic book about obviously deadly competition. It has kind of like a dark academia feel to it as well. It very much focuses on the corruption of society and the corruption of power in particular. So I had to recommend that one. The next one is Queen of Tiles, which is for anyone who really liked the Queen's Gambit or liked the idea of the Queen's Gambit, looking at like a competitive world of games but cannot do chess. The Queen of Tiles is about Scrabble, so it's about a competitive Scrabble tournament where one person ends up collapsing / dying. And so it's about them and sort of everyone's motives and what would happen there. The next one is The Bells. I have not read The Bells in so long, so I'm just looking at the synopsis, but basically it's this world of Orleans, and they have this kind of magical feel to it, and they have the bells control beauty, like they're responsible for beauty procedures that are related to magic. And because in this world, everyone's born gray. And so then you get kind of beauty magic to transform and be made beautiful. But it's a lot about the court, and it's a lot about power in that sense, and what we would do for that power, appearance power, and also like the social and power of beauty, I guess, is what I think of when I think of The Bells. And the final one is Dead Girls Walking, which is a YA horror / thriller book. Basically, our main character, her father is a serial killer, and he is like confessed all these crimes, but he confesses on death row to killing her mother, but she does not believe it. So she goes back to where she knows that his activities occurred, I guess, to try to prove that. And actually there, it's been turned into an overnight camp for queer horror-obsessed girls. And there they kind of deal with the ghosts of the past. Not only her ghosts of her past, but also like the ghosts of the past at the camp as well. And it is just like, if you love YA horror / thrillers, also if you love kind of books about that and the idea of legacy, then you should definitely check that one out. Next, we're going to chat about the Kiss Club playlist. There are only 4 that I wanted to talk about as well. So the first one is Outdrawn, which is actually on my TBR, and it's in my cart now. I need to check. I feel like I may own this book as an ebook. It has dual narrators, and basically it's like what was it? I think it is, when it was described to me, I think it was a sapphic rivals to lovers, but they're like academic rivals, I think. No, they're just rivals. They're just full-on rivals. So basically, one character is responsible for a webcomic, and she gets a full-time position at a comic company to relaunch a webcomic. And so there, though, she meets another artist. Yeah, so I had to read this twice, actually. So there she meets another artist, and then she's sort of co-credited or co-working with this other artist who she has a history of, but they were rivals as well in college. So that is where I got the rivals, the academic rivals. But I'm going to have to figure out if I have this, and if not, then I'll just, get it because it is already in my cart. The next one is Hate to Want You by Alicia Rai. I've loved everything I've read by Alicia Rai, period. Hate to Want You is not the first book I read from Alicia Rai. I think I actually read the gamer ones, or the ones that are really bright yellow / orange / pink. And I actually went back to read Hate to Want You. I never listened to it as an audiobook, but it's also dual perspective. And I remember just really enjoying it. Basically, each year they come together and they share one night, and then that's the deal, right? And then they never kind of talk about it, I guess, ever again, until one night she doesn't show up. And so then it's about kind of him figuring out why, and her figuring out why they're still drawn to each other, and what kind of connection they still have after all of these years. Written in the Stars is something I feel like I've mentioned in a past Librofm sale. It's by Alexandria Bellafleur. And it is the first one I read from Alexandria Bellafleur. And this is the one where it says it's with nods to Bridget Jones and Pride and Prejudice. I think that is so spot on. It's a queer rom-com about one person who is a social media astrologer. And so she agrees to fake date someone else until New Year's Eve. So that's basically the main story behind Written in the Stars. I want to say Written in the Stars is the first one in this series, because it is a series of companion novels, and so I think that Written in the Stars could be the first one as well. But it is a YA retelling of Romeo and Juliet. Or it's, okay, sort of. So basically we have these two main characters in a new show headed to Broadway, and they play a Romeo and Juliet inspired hip opera. So it's not like Romeo and Juliet in the sense that they themselves are Romeo and Juliet. They are playing Romeo and Juliet in the cast. And one of the main characters becomes an understudy, and then she ends up falling for the main male lead. And of course, that's going to cause drama and sparks. And of course, star-crossed as well. So that's why it was they're playing Romeo and Juliet, but it has Romeo and Juliet themes as well. So that one's really... Now I'm going to share some sort of sale audiobooks that I found that were not under these two playlists, even though they probably could be, basically. So the first one I want to talk about is Business Casual. This is the fourth in the Love Light series book series. I know that I've actually talked so many times about the Love Light series just because they're normally on sale a lot. But this is the most recent release, and it came out this year. Yeah, it came out this year. So it's basically going to be another companion series installment to the Love Light Farm series, which basically, if you're not familiar, the Love Light Farm series is revolving around a Christmas tree farm, which is predominantly, I would say, co-owned / managed by basically 3 characters. And throughout the series, we've kind of chatted about each of these different side characters throughout the series. Business Casual, which is the last one, is on sale now. So if you've been reading these and you as well have bought all of them, which I have done, then maybe this is worth checking out. The next one is The Scarlet Alchemist, which is perfect timing because The Blood Orchid, the second book, comes out in October. So if you get this one, you can basically instantly read this. Kylie Lee Baker is one of my favorite authors. I would say she's not for everyone. There's a bit of blood. And especially in The Scarlet Alchemist, this very much has an Eat the Rich vibe that also kind of meets alchemy and also a little bit of necromancy. So it has everything that I love all wrapped into one. The main character is really kind of struggling to figure out if she can not only survive in the trials against the other alchemists, but she's also trying to figure out how she can just survive like within this competitive and incredibly high class environment. Also, there's like a chaotic group in here that I really love with all of my heart. And so I wanted to mention that one because the sequel comes out in October. The next one is Librofm, which is actually on my shelf. I know that it's on my shelf. And so I'm really excited for this one. Basically, it's a post-apocalyptic dystopia set in North America. Let's see, what else can I say? So there are Indigenous survivors, and they live among settlers. And so obviously the settlers want to do settler things, awful things, which are basically just erasing language, culture, and oppressing other people. And what happens is that we have these two characters who try to steal from the rich, but then one of them gets caught and the other one takes the fall. And that's kind of the starting point for the story. I'm incredibly excited for this one, not only because I have it, but also because it has a dual narrative. And also I really like reading kind of kids books or middle grade books in audiobook form. To me, it just feels super nostalgic. It feels very much like how I was read to as a child. So even though I own it, I think that it's going to go into my cart just because I love the experience of it. And also it, to me, harkens so much back to how it would be if I was a child. So what can I say? The next one is Lights Out, which I definitely have mentioned in a previous Librofm video before Lights Out came out. Lights Out has come out, and I've also read Lights Out, so many things have changed. It's going to be the first in a series. If you really like Leather and Lark / Butcher and Blackbird, I think they're very good comps in the sense that they're both kind of dark romances. They're both featuring... Well, Leather and Lark, which comes up actually a little bit later, and Butcher and Blackbird feature serial killers. And then Lights Out features actually a trauma nurse. That's one of the characters. Basically, she follows someone online who is like a masked man persona and just like films videos of that. And so then she ends up meeting / fantasizing about this man in particular, and of course then like they randomly through a series of events end up actually connecting in real life. I wrote a review on this one, so I'll link that one down below in addition to the Librofm one, because obviously because of that maybe you would have some reservations. I definitely did when I first started reading it because there is a little bit of a morally gray aspect to it, but I think once you read it and once you see like the depth of the characters, because it is dual perspective, then you start to understand it a lot more and their specific dynamic and what they see in each other. So that's all I'll say. The next one is Lula Dean's Little Library of Banned Books. This book kind of really beautifully manages to straddle the line between being incredibly infuriating and also hopeful. So basically, it happens that one person is deciding to go to the library basically and pull all of these books off of the shelves. This is something that is incredibly relevant and timely to today. And so she ends up she decides to then have in the front of her yard like this little library of non-banned books, like the books you're supposed to read instead of these awful banned books. But someone actually goes in and replaces those books with the very banned books that they were, but keeps the original dust jackets. So she like never knows. And also you'll sometimes see bits of her perspective, which I think gives it an infuriating but also humorous approach, if that makes any sense. To that, so you can kind of see a little bit in her character, but like honestly this is not a book that is involved or interested in humanizing this character at all in that sense. So in that sense, like we do have, it feels cathartic in the sense that we do have a more cut and dry sort of book in the sense that like doing this is awful. People should be able to read whatever they want, and like these books, and specifically a lot of the books that she chats about, are absolutely not a danger to children. But it does have like an infuriating aspect as well, but definitely a hopeful aspect because you see the community being changed by this free little library of books that she's like so happy that people are reading, but as actually they're not reading those books. And so I think it really speaks to the power of books in both ways, like the power of books that people are afraid of, in the sense that books can be some beautiful tools of not only resistance, but tools to help you figure out who you are as a person, to make sense of the world, to learn about experiences that are not your own. So I had to mention that one. The next one is Someone You Can Build a Nest In, which is very much a niche book. It's a monster romance in the sense that it's like a shapeshifter who ends up having a queer romance kind of storyline with someone else. That's not necessarily the main storyline of this. This is a book that's hard to explain because it very much has those aspects. But what really drew me to it was it talks about like monsters in human and non-human forms and kind of what should we be more afraid of, sort of the monster that we can see or the monster that hides in plain sight. If you like that theme, then you would really enjoy Someone You Can Build a Nest In. I will say that the shape-shifting to me was a little bit nebulous. I had a really kind of difficult time figuring out what they look like and what like they're shape-shifting into. But I'm not a very visual reader in general, but I did have trouble with that. But I think that as I said, that one kind of is more of a niche read. I've seen some people who really like it and some people who don't. The next one is Plain Bad Heroines, which I've heard a lot about, both good and bad. So I did want to mention it because I'm interested, except I got a copy of it once ages ago, and it is a lot larger than I thought that it's going to be. Basically, it is a story, it's a historical fiction set in 1902 at a school for girls. We have two characters who are obsessed with each other, so it very much has gothic romance or gothic vibes, which is I think why I heard about it. It's also I think queer, and they're also obsessed with a young writer, and because of that they make a separate club which is called the Plain Bad Heroine Society, where they meet and then they talk about these, and they're like, you know, the expertly teenage angst beings that they are. And then it also talks as well about a century later where the school is now crumbling. So I'm still intrigued in this one, and I'd like to read it kind of with like a critical lens and also to remember why people brought it up. But it is so long. So honestly, I don't really know. The next one is Leather and Lark, which I kind of already talked a little bit about. This is the sequel to Butcher and Blackbird. It's still a serial killer romance series. If you've read Butcher and Blackbird, you'll obviously realize if you want to read Leather and Lark. I liked Leather and Lark, but I think that I liked Butcher and Blackbird better. I don't know if it's because I had no expectations going into Butcher and Blackbird and was then so blown away, and then I had high expectations going to Leather and Lark, and those were mostly met. But I did like the dynamics between Leather and Lark in the sense that they're both kind of figuring out their misconceptions of each other. They have an awful kind of meet cute on a variety of different levels. They also have to fake marry each other, but not for realsies, basically. And it wasn't interesting to see the character of Lark, who was actually the best friend of one of the characters in Butcher and Blackbird. So definitely worthwhile, and I'm really excited for the next one in the Ruinous Love trilogy. The next one is Sunbringer, which is the sequel to Godkiller. I think it's going to be a trilogy, so definitely would make sense to pick this one up. How do I describe this? First of all, I can't tell you about the synopsis, but because it obviously spoils a lot of the endings of Godkiller. I will say, though, I really loved the dynamic between the group of characters that are at the core of Godkiller. I think in Sunbringer, you kind of see relationships of all sorts fracture, be put together again, like having to reconcile the actions, betrayals, trust, like all of these kinds of nitty-gritty things to kind of figure out how our relationships evolve over time. And I do think that that was one of my main things that I liked the most about Sunbringer. It was a little bit harder as like characters split away from each other. They go in different directions at certain points and they come back together. It was a little bit difficult in that sense because it is multiple perspective. I thought the first one had a little bit more ensemble-ness to it. But I really am excited for the third one, and this was a really solid sequel. The next one is The Hurricane Wars, which I really enjoyed. I enjoyed it for different reasons than you might know about it. So basically, I did not know that it was originally kind of came about or from the Raylo, Kalo, whatever ships, like fan ships or fandom basically. And I also did not necessarily connect to the romance aspect, which is what I overwhelmingly saw as kind of marketing and promotion for, like this relationship, whatever. What I ended up really enjoying, and I think what is the strongest part of the book that will be talked about in the next one, on Monsoon Rising, is the colonization and the societal implications of their relationships in terms of their countries and what they have had to do in the past to survive, what they have to do in terms of rebellion, and also in terms of sort of reconciling that. I think when you have enemies to lovers romance, you're not necessarily going to satisfy everybody. There are things that people are looking for in not only enemies to lovers, but also in a redemption arc, if there is any, in enemies to lovers romances. So I would say that I actually really enjoyed the world building, the politics, the subterfuge, the magical awakening / magical training as well in the Hurricane Wars. That's why I really enjoyed it. And for me, the romance elements were kind of secondary and were not necessarily the reason why I enjoyed it as much, which I think didn't match how it was being described to me, which is why in my reviews and here I've tried to tell people about that, just in case you don't know where you fall on that spectrum of what you're looking for in this kind of book. The next one is Radiant Sin. This is the Dark Olympus book 4, but like always, a bunch of Dark Olympus books are on sale. Radiant Sin, Cruel Seduction, and Midnight Ruin. I think it's all trying to get people ready for Dark Restraint, which is the newest release of this series. I'm excited. I don't even know if I've read Radiant Sin, honestly. I've lost the plot, lost like the thread for the Dark Olympus series, and every year I see more come out and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so behind on this. When am I going to catch up? I don't know, because honestly I don't think I have read Radiant Sin. It's on my TBR. I have it. Eventually I will read it because I do want to put together a video all about Katie Robert and Katie Robert's series, but there are a lot. I just haven't done it yet. So if you're with me, I guess you can pick up Radiant Sin, Cruel Seduction, and Midnight Ruin, and we can all read them and all get caught up as well. They're all Greek retellings, but like super loosely. I would say if you're looking for a faithful Greek retelling, this is not where you should start. They're more loosely, it's kind of all this idea of Olympus as a whole. There's a little bit of messing around with like demigods and godly figures and everything like that. You just have to let go of like any conception or any knowledge I feel like you have about these Greek myths and just go into this being like, these are Greek myth tangentially connected people, but they're not like the Greek myths that I know. I think at the beginning we were sticking more towards or more closely to what was happening, but at some point we kind of veered off and have gone a more like further and further away with kind of brief connections, but looser, I guess, as the world continues. It's also been 6 books. I think there might be a 7th book coming out soon after Dark Restraint. So it's just a huge amount of world that you need to balance and need to develop and stuff like that. So I think it's just natural as well that it kind of goes off of what you were expecting. And that is all that I want to chat about in terms of audiobook sales. I hope that some of these have been exciting for you. I know that for me, I always find them exciting. I always add things to my cart as well. And so let me know down below what you're currently reading on audiobook, and if you're going to pick up any of the books that I mentioned, or you're currently reading any of those books. And I will see you in the next video and also in the next Librofm sale for October. Okay, bye.